والله يدعو إلى دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah. You're watching Clearing the Fog, lifting the fog of miscommunication, misunderstandings, and misrepresentation of Islam and the teachings that go along with it. This is your host, Yusuf Estes, and I would like to continue in this particular segment of our series talking about the treatment of women. And this is just one example of how people misunderstand something and the proper way to give the answer to help the people to better understand and even come to Islam themselves. I happened to have been in Florida during Ramadan one time, and after the talk that we gave in the masjid, there were two visitors there who had some questions. They asked me if I would go talk to these ladies and try to answer their question that they had about Islam. I said, sure, why not? So I went to sit with them. These were two young college girls, about 19 each. And they were asking me about a question about the treatment of women. And they said, I have one question, then that's it. I said, you only have one question. I said, there's only one question standing between you and understanding real Islam. Is that it? You heard me explain we believe in one God. We've talked about how we have to worship Him and do what He wants us to do, etc. And you just have one question. They said, that's right. I said, well, that's great. What's your question? They said, we want to know why you have a partition between the men and the women. Why is there this hijab or curtain or partition in your masjid here, separating the men from the women? I said, that's your only question. They said, yeah. I said, this is amazing. Nothing else. You understand what I talked about, how God is one, how you have to do what He wants you to do? They said, yeah, we got all that. I said, okay, good. So this is the only thing holding you back. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, let me explain something to you. In Islam, we consider it an honor for us to give answers to questions. So we thank you for asking us about our religion. The next thing is, we must always tell the truth. It's not an option for us. And if we don't tell the truth, Allah will put us in hell for that. So definitely, we want very much to be on that truth. The next thing is, we have the proof. Everything in Islam has been recorded, authenticated, and preserved for over 1,400 years. And keeping that in mind, I want you to think that what I'm going to say to you today, you can verify for yourself. And by the way, a lot of times we find questions that are not really questions. They have statements in them that mean be straightened out. And in this case, your question is a good one. And I'd like to mention that the answer to it has helped people get into Islam. And they're looking at me like, what? And then I began to give them the answer. But before I did, I said, if you hear something that I'm going to say today that makes you feel good, and you say, gee, I like that. That's something I didn't know. This is something I like for me, something I want to do. Then are you going to be prepared to consider worshiping your Lord alone without any partners? Because in reality, that's all Islam is about. It's about worshiping God on His terms. And are you going to be ready to do that? They said, well, what's the answer? I said, okay. Before I go any further, can I ask you a question? What's your religion? They said, yeah, we're Catholic. I said, well, that's good. Catholic is a religion been around for a long time. But I want to ask you, in your religion, the best of your women, how do they dress? Don't they cover all up? They said, yeah, but that's not our question. We're not asking about the covering, the hijab. No. We're asking about the partition in the masjid. Why do you have a separation of the men from the women? I said, well, this is a part of the answer, but I want you to come from your point of view so you can understand. Do you have women that are considered your best women, and don't they wear this hijab, this covering? They said, yeah, we have that. I said, okay. Now, do these women have babies? They said, oh, no, never. I said, why? They said, they never get married. I said, okay. They don't ever get married? Why? They said, because they're married to God? I said, that's a good one. You guys have a problem with the Muslims that we can get married to 4 wives, but you're saying your God can get married to how many? I'm just joking, but still, it's something for you to think about when you start talking about Islam compared to other religions. And they said, well, yeah, but what about this petition? We want to know, why do you have it? I said, well, I'm coming to that. If you understand in Islam, the best of our women do wear the hijab. That's true. But at the same time, they're encouraged to get married. We like for the Muslims to get married and to have babies. That's a good purpose of marriage, isn't it? That we should get married, have children, and subhanAllah, this is a beautiful part of our life, that it's complete, it's holistic. We don't ask people to give up a natural instinct to be religious. We ask them to follow what God has put in their hearts, which is to get married and have children. Now, when a woman has a baby, she has to nurse her baby. Isn't that true? They said, well, yes. And I said, now, how could a woman come to this mosque and sit here and listen to this program tonight and have a baby? She'd have to feed it. Now, how could she do that? So here you have this partition which allows the women to remove their hijab and sit and relax. If they have a baby, they can feed their baby because they can expose themselves in front of other women. They just can't do it in front of strange men. So she doesn't have to wear the covering behind this screen. And in fact, the women from your church, the Catholic Church, have to wear their hijab or their covering or what's called the habit. They have to wear it all the time. They wear it from the time they wake up until the time they go to sleep. The only time they don't wear it is when they go to sleep at night. Whereas for the Muslim women, they never have to wear it, except when they're going to be out in public or if some strange man would come to their house. So this is the difference. And what we do by putting the petition up is to make it in such a way that these women have a place that they can come, relax, and enjoy the program. They can remove their hijab, they can feed their babies, and take care of their normal things that they would do, even in the privacy of their home. So this is the reason for this. It is not mandated in Islam to put a wall up like that. In fact, at the time of Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, they didn't used to do that. They didn't need to, especially at night or in the morning because it's dark. And under the normal, natural darkness that occurs, they could come and go without being really noticed. But when we add these lighting facilities that we have today, you have these bright fluorescent lights, incandescent lights, then certainly you want to make up for that. And how you do that is by having this partition where the ladies can go by behind them and have this privacy that otherwise was afforded to them by the natural darkness. They said, oh, we didn't know that. We didn't realize that. I said, that's okay. There's another point, too, though. I'd like to ask you this. You see how Islam is providing for the needs of the woman, right? They said, yeah. I said, Islam is a lot more than you realize because it gives always a balance. And there's a beautiful balance in Islam when we talk about the difference between the men and the women. Men have different needs than women, and women have different needs than men. And Islam is providing for that, as we just saw in this example. So then I asked them a question. If the best of your men and the best of your women are not allowed to get married and to procreate and to have children, doesn't that mean then that only the worst of your men and the worst of your women are getting married and having babies? And ultimately, what would be the society? That only the worst of the people are giving birth and only the worst of the people are continuing in the society. Whereas in Islam, the best of the men and the best of the women are encouraged to get married, to have children, to procreate, and then to raise them up as good, responsible citizens, as good, responsible Muslims, obeying God and doing His will here on earth. They said, well, we never thought about that before. I said, well, really, that's something for us all to think about. Because Islam is not something that's a man-made religion. It's a complete way of life, giving the balance to everything, giving the rights and the limits that go along with the proper balance of life. So we understand from this that Islam is not making life difficult. Rather, it's solving problems from God's point of view, not from our point of view. And then I said, because you've asked me this question, it means God has guided you to come to us to learn about this message. Therefore, this is your opportunity to think about it. You need to pray about this and ask God to guide you. And with that, I left them. The next year, I came back, and I visited the same community, and I was in the same masjid. And I was giving another lecture. And I said, let me tell you what happened when I was here last year. After my lecture, there were two girls, and they asked me why we have this partition here between the men and the women. And I explained to them that this is something that we put here so that the women would have a place for privacy. They could remove their hijab. and they could nurse their babies, and they could just relax in general. And then I asked those women, what about in your religion where you have the nuns and the priests who are not allowed to get married? They're not allowed to have children. And we all know what that could lead to, some very serious consequences. And while I was talking about this same subject, everybody in the masjid started laughing. Ha, 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 ha. I said, why are you laughing? They said, Shaikh, we know about it. I said, what do you mean? They said, after you left, those women came back and they made shahada. They entered Islam. And they're on the other side of that petition right now. I said, oh my God. They said, yeah, they understood the message and they became Muslims. I said, Allahu Akbar. And that particular incident is the one that caused me to realize how important it is for us to begin to understand our religion, our way of life of Islam, and be able to present it in simple terms. Because not only is it good for us, it's good for them, and it gives people a chance to enter Islam. And since that time until now, we've been trying to work on the methodology or the manhaj of our Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, to know and understand the presentation of the real meaning behind what's Islam. And subhanAllah, it's led us to have this very program you're watching right now. This segment of this program called Lifting the Fog is a result of that incident which occurred a number of years ago in that masjid in Ramadan. And since then, when we've presented answers to questions, we start with that same format where we tell them, thank you for asking about our religion. In our religion, we have the truth, and we must speak the truth, otherwise we can be punished by Allah. And we have the proof to back it up. What we say is documented. It's not something I can make up or change or alter to suit the situation. It stays firm and concrete all the time. This helps me when I present to you this message, because I don't have to waver or quaff one way or the other. I know what I'm saying is backed up by 1,400 years of documentation. And then, while you're listening to the answer, consider if this is a good way for you. And if you like this way of submitting to God's will, maybe it can change your life. And I always ask the people to go and pray in your heart and ask Allah to guide you. And speaking of being guided, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to be on this same subject, talking about the way Islam treats the women, and in particular how to answer these questions when people come to you with these harsh attacks. Stay tuned for more right here on Huda TV. This is Yusuf Estes reminding you it's only Allah who guides. May Allah guide us all. Ameen.
My name is Shaikh.